Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Happy weekend, happy Saturday. How's everybody doing today? All right. Can we have a little more rousing hello? Are we all awake? Have we had our coffee and our green tea? It's a little early for me too. All right. I know you guys are happy to be here for this very important event. My name is Sion Rhodes. I am an anchor for Channel 2 News. You can normally catch me this evening and Sunday evenings at 5 and 10 and 6 and 10. I'm very happy to be here for this Houston4All's Candidate Forum for Congressional District 29. We are here today to learn more about the candidates, what they have done, what they plan to do to promote the well-being of the residents of District 29. What is their vision for helping people in this district prosper? The questions we'll be making today will be chosen by members of the Texas Organizing Project and SEIU Texas. Again, thank you to the candidates for being here, making the time to talk to us today. Before we start, just a little bit of housekeeping, some ground rules to ensure fairness and keep us on track. Our goal is for our voters to understand the substantive differences in the candidates' positions on critical community issues. And to help you keep track of the candidates' views, we've given each of you a bilingual scorecard so that you can take notes while the candidates talk. Now we ask that you please be respectful of the candidates. Please refrain from any name calling or outburst, and please do not interrupt. Now because of time constraints, we will not be able to take questions from the audience. Today's forum is being sponsored by the Texas Organizing Project, SEIU Texas, and Mi Familia Vota. We will begin with 1 minute opening statements from each candidate. We will then go straight into the questions that each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer. Again, 2 minutes to deliver their closing remarks as well. We want to welcome the candidates now. Joining us today, Representative Gene Green. And former Sheriff Adrian Garcia. You may notice that we have a center table that is empty today. We did have a third confirmed candidate, Dominique Garcia, was scheduled to appear this morning, however she canceled this morning. So that is why there is the empty desk there. So Sheriff Garcia, we're going to begin with you. You have 1 minute to make your opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Buenos días. Gracias. Mi nombre es Adrián García y quiero tener su apoyo para ser el próximo congresista de los Estados Unidos en el distrito 29. I want your endorsement. I want your support. I want to be your voice. I want to be the next member of Congress for the 29th Congressional District. Look, we have an opportunity to elect leadership. Someone who's going to fight for families and fight for our children and fight for the environment and fight for gun safety. I'm Adrian Garcia. I've provided that leadership for you in the past. I want to continue to do so. It's unconscionable that we should have the third worst performing congressional district in America as it relates to education. Nuestras familias merecen mejor. Yo quiero trabajar, yo quiero ser su voz, y no es justo que llegamos a tener el distrito 3, que es el peor en todos los Estados Unidos a través de los índices de educación. Soy Adrián García y quiero su apoyo. I'm Adrian Garcia and I want to be a member of Congress. Thank you.
And Congressman Green.
It works. My name is Gene Green, and I am your member of Congress. And I'm proud of the work that I've done over the last 23 years in our district and in Washington. I work every day in Washington to provide adequate jobs, health care, and economic opportunity and education funding. And that's just not in Washington. I come home every weekend, and let me talk about the events we've done in our district for decades now. We started in 1994 doing Citizenship Days. Every year we help legal residents fill out their paperwork. And we've helped thousands of people become U.S. citizens. Immunizations, in August of every year, we do free immunizations. We do paying for college workshops twice a year in our high schools. So I not only work in Washington, but I work in the district. We do lots of town hall meetings. Those of you who are constituents, you know, because you get them from the newsletters. I'm at home serving our community and appreciate your support. Thank you.
And now we will begin our questions from the panel here. We begin with Crystal Sanchez of SEIU, Texas, for the first question.
As you know, the average hourly wage has either stayed flat or gone down over the past 3 decades for most workers. Here in Texas, we have the highest raw number of hourly workers earning the minimum wage or less. That's over 6.4 million workers supposedly gainfully employed, yet struggling to make ends meet for our families. Do you support a $15 minimum wage? How will you advocate for Houston to expand access to quality jobs like raising the minimum wage?
And again, each candidate has 2 minutes. We'll begin with Mr. Garcia.
Yes, I do support the 15-hour minimum wage. I'm already on record, and I've already said that publicly. Because in the 29th Congressional District, we have 1 in 3 children living below poverty. 54% of the people do not own their own home. And the median income is only $39,000 for a family of 4. And that is unconscionable. That's actually gotten worse since Gene's been in office. And so I want to fight to bring good paying jobs into the district so that people can lift themselves up out of their bootstraps. But I'll also tell you that when I become your member of Congress, I'm going to join the Progressive Caucus because they have always provided a budget that the people respect, the people's budget. Gene has always voted against the Progressive Caucus's budget. And so I am going to fight to make sure that we're providing the economic opportunities that families so richly deserve. You know, when I grew up humbly, I waited in government lines with my mother to get my peanut butter, my flour, my rice and beans. And you know what? It was good. It helped our family. It helped our family get through those tough times. But because my family was able to have access to opportunity, we lifted ourselves up. You know, when I talk about opportunity on all levels, education being one of them, Gene has said that the Congressional District will never be River Oaks. I mean, he doesn't mind you cutting the yards. He doesn't mind you cleaning the houses. He doesn't mind you washing the dishes. He doesn't mind you waiting on the tables in River Oaks. But he says that the 29th District will never become River Oaks. I disagree. And when you support a higher minimum wage, when you support better jobs coming in the district, when you support a progressive budget, the people's budget, that's how you address poverty in a community. And I don't want to stand by and see more children continue to struggle. When I was growing up, I didn't know how poor we were. But children today do. I do support the $15 minimum wage.
Do I get as much time even though we only have 2 minutes?
2 minutes for each candidate.
Okay, but I thought that was over 2 minutes.
We'll give you 3
Okay, I just want equal time.
3 extra seconds.
Okay. Well, I've been a co-sponsor of every minimum wage increase bill and since I've been in Congress. The last time we increased was 2007, and I co-sponsored the bill then, and I'm a co-sponsor of the current bill for $15 an hour because I believe in the minimum wage. I'm proud to be here with SEIU because a few years ago when they first started organizing, I walked picket before they got a contract, and I was presented with this award. And then when the renewal came up, we did the same thing, contacted owners of buildings to make sure that they are fair. So, yeah, but mine's framed, Adrian. And so I don't hold a candle to, I don't want to take anything away because I support it. I grew up in North Side just like Adrian did. My dad was a small business on Irvington. So believe me, I worked for $1.25 an hour in the 60s. So that's why it's so important. And I do believe that we're not River Oaks because River Oaks doesn't need trade skills. We need trade skills in North Side and East End Houston. That's what Houston Community College and San Jac does, and I've helped them get funding for those. Thank you.
Buenos días. Como saben ustedes, las comunidades portuarias en el distrito sufren de muchos peligros creados por el complejo petroquímico de 15,000 millones de dólares. Estudios recientes de la zona han demostrado que los niños que viven a 2 millas del canal de navegación tenían un mayor riesgo de 56% de desarrollar leucemia. Además, el 35% de los residentes, que son en gran medida afroamericanos y latinos, no cuentan con seguro médico. ¿Por cuáles pólizas específicas van a luchar y qué estratégicas específicas va a emplear para mantener a las empresas responsables, a sus empleados y a la comunidad alrededor? Gracias.
As you know, the poor communities in the district suffer from many hazards created by the 15 billion petrochemical complex. Recent studies in the area have shown that the children living within 2 miles of the ship channel have had 56% increased risk of developing leukemia. Half of the sources of the air pollution in the greater Houston area are concentrated in the eastern port corridor, creating high risk of cancer and chronic disease. In addition, 35% of residents, which are largely Black and Latino, lack health insurance, the second highest level of any Texas congressional district, and 28.7% earned income last year below the federal poverty line. In addition, there are many climate-related risks due to the specific location of chemical facilities prone to the dangerous storms that increase the hazards for poor communities. So what specific policies will you fight for, and what specific strategies will you employ to hold companies responsible to workers and the surrounding community?
Congressman Green.
I've worked for years in Congress, even before when I was in the legislature, to have air quality monitors in East End. We do have the most heavily monitored air in any place else in the country. We have the EPA monitoring. We have the state agency, TCQ. City of Houston monitors the part that's in the city. Harris County Health Department monitors the part. Even some of the industries are now monitoring their fence line, so they will know what they're doing. When we watch that monitoring, we can know what substances are going into our air and causing asthma, causing a whole list of illnesses. And that's what these agencies are for, both local, state, and the federal agencies. I'll work with all those agencies to make sure our air is as safe as it can be, and if it's not, we need to find out what they need to do. I support any new technologies to clean that air, but our air is much cleaner today than it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and it's going to get better. On health care, I'm a co-sponsor of the Affordable Care Act. I was on the committee to help write it. It's not perfect, but after the first rollout, 20,000 of our constituents got health care who couldn't have it last time. We need to do better. We need to expand Medicaid. That's a state issue. And I'm introducing a bill next week to make sure the federal government reimburses the state for 100% for 3 years of what Medicaid costs so our constituents can get health care. Thank you.
Mr. Garcia.
You're absolutely right. Más bien estás completamente correcto que este distrito es uno de los peores a través del medio ambiente, porque Gene Green ha tomado más de $1 millón, 1.3 millones de dólares de las empresas de petróleo, de químicos, y por eso ha votado 133 veces en contra mejorando el medio ambiente. Por eso él tiene un grado F. Y es el sexto peor congresista demócrata en el Congreso. Let me translate that. Gene has taken over $1 million, $1.3 million from oil, gas, and chemical companies. And it's no wonder why he votes 133 times against clean air, clean water, and renewable energies. And it's why he has achieved an F rating. 64% ranking by the League of Conservation Voters, which puts him at the bottom, the sixth worst Democrat in Congress on the environment. The specific strategies that I will put in place is, number one, to be a fighter for clean air and clean water and renewable energies. Just yesterday, I was proud to receive the endorsement of Sissy Ferrethel, a staunch defender of the environment. And she said that when she first worked with Gene on the environment, that she said she made a promise to herself that if there was ever a choice against Gene, she would support that choice. That is me. Because she knows that he has been bad for the children. To have these children growing up with the opportunity to have cancer versus the opportunity to be an astronaut is unconscionable. You need a leader. You need someone who's going to fight for you. I'm Adrian Garcia, and I want your endorsement so I can fight for clean energy, clean water, clean air. Thank you.
Our next question will come from Diana Vienes. She is with Mi Familia Vota.
Good morning. Harris County Commissioner's Court has had a 287G agreement with the federal government for the past several years. This agreement has destroyed thousands of immigrant families by either incarcerating or deporting family members, many of whom have committed only a traffic violation. In total, there have been over 12,000 deportations in Harris County between 2012 and February 2015, averaging about 300 every month during that period. What is your position regarding these types of agreements, and how will you use your influence to encourage Commissioner's Court not to renew 287G type agreements that allow for close collaboration between ICE and Sheriff's Office? How will you use your influence to encourage the City of Houston to undertake pro-immigrant initiatives like municipal ID?
Mr. Garcia.
Gracias. I do support getting away from 287G. I tried to do it. I was sworn to protect the community, and I tried hard. But when I heard from the community, concern after concern after concern, I took every one of those and I went to the President of the United States. I went to Secretaries Napolitano, Secretaries Johnson, and I believe I contributed to making sure that that program was better today than it was when I inherited it when I first became sheriff. But let me also just say to you that because I kept my door open and my mind open, activists, people who stood up against me, were allowed to come to my office and share with me their concerns and their arguments and their frustrations. And I listened to every one of them. I had town hall meetings that were painful to hear the stories of mothers and daughters and family members as it relates to immigration enforcement. I listened. And then I took that work back and I made the program better. I sat down with the president and I said, we have to do better. And I believe that my advocacy helped the president on his executive orders. And when I become your member of Congress, municipal IDs, I'll support them. I'll fight for them. But I want to make sure that we don't need to have those piecemeal solutions to this problem. I want to fight for comprehensive immigration reform. I don't want to be like Gene, who, when he was in the state legislature, sponsored 4 consecutive years bills that were anti-immigrant that eventually became the E-Verify program. I'm not going to be like Gene and miss voting against the Real ID Act when you need to be there present to vote against it. And I'm not going to be like Gene and miss the vote on DACA. Of all things, DACA. And I'm not going to vote for 287G before I vote against it like Gene has. I'm going to be a fighter. I'm going to listen to you. My door's going to be open. My mind's going to be open. And I'm going to remember that I am the only American born of my family.
That's time.
The children of parents of immigrants. Thank you.
I've been original co-sponsor of comprehensive immigration reform for decades, because that's where the decision's made. You cannot do citizenship days every year and help people fill out their paperwork without understanding how important it is for someone to have legal residency and ultimately their choice to become citizens. The 287 program was passed in the 1980s under President Reagan, put into effect when President Bush did an executive order. And there were only 2 agencies in the state of Texas who did 287G. Harris County was one of them. And I've heard from constituents whose children and family were deported because they were picked up because they didn't have a driver's license and deported. That was wrong. Comprehensive immigration reform bill that I co-sponsored actually will eliminate 287G agreements all across the country. That's what's so important. And I'm proud to be endorsed by the Congressional Hispanic Caucus because I've worked with them for my whole career in Washington on immigration reform. In fact, Congressman Luis Gutierrez, who is literally our leader on that, is actually making calls in our district for me. And so that's why immigration reform is important, because I see it every day in the job I do.
And now we'll have Esther Rios of the Texas Organizing Project for our next question.
Right now, we are seeing an uneven distribution of resources in our neighborhoods across the district and specifically in the city of Houston. We are fighting to create neighborhoods of opportunity that include equalized infrastructure, investments across the neighborhood, dollars for drainage, street and sidewalk improvements. In addition, we need investments in projects that increase minority home ownership and high quality affordable housing, particularly as our neighborhoods begin to face gentrification, which is already taking place within the parts of the district. What have you done and what will you do to, one, draw down more federal resources for this type of investment, and two, how will you work with local jurisdictions to ensure that these resources reach residents in your district?
Congressman Green.
Over my career in Congress, we've worked with the city and the county and any local agency to help bring federal money to our district. The Port of Houston in the 90s, we got about $450 million for the dredging from Beltway 8 out, so the Port of Houston would still be competitive with other ports. The light rail that we have, the North Line one and the Southeast Line, we couldn't get light rail in Houston until a Democrat majority in 2007, and that's when we were able to get $900 million to build light rail out to Northside and out to Palm Center. So I support the federal money coming to help us with our transportation, particularly clean transportation. I can go over the list of issues. One of my first requests was the Manchester Bridge at Central Avenue. We got $12.5 million in 1998 over those 9 train tracks in the Manchester area because it was literally a hazard. There's so many of them. I worked with the East End Management District, so many other local communities to get federal money for sidewalks and user-friendly transportation. Thank you.
Before there was TOP, there was Acorn. And I was a partner on city council with Acorn, fighting for affordable housing, fighting against predatory lending for people who were being put in harmful situations by people who are taking advantage of the Spanish-speaking community specifically. And I fought to get $3 million invested into the near north side. When I was the council member for this area, we fought to get drainage improvements out here. I fought to make sure that the light rail lines were done correctly and that we supported the appropriate stops so that people can participate in them. And when I was a sheriff, I made sure that we were supporting economic opportunity for people who were leaving the county jail, giving them the opportunity to get jobs when they were coming out of the jail. These are all things that a leader does. This is what a person does, trying to help those in the community. And this is why, respective of immigration issues and all those challenges, I've been at the table, listening to the people, working for them every single day. This is why Gabby Pacheco, a national dreamer, a national leader in the dreamer community, has endorsed my campaign because she knows that I stay at the table, I work, and I fight for people. But it's also imperative to recognize that this district is the 8th worst in the country on opportunity. This is why I support the $15 minimum wage. This is why I support making sure that we're fighting for higher education opportunities for our children. This is why I support President Obama making community college free. It is important that we make sure that we do not lose sight of the fact that we're here to represent the people of this district. We're not going to Washington to represent oil and gas companies and say publicly that this district will never be River Oaks. I want to give encouragement, motivation, inspiration for our families to achieve greater opportunities. For the next astronaut to come out of the 29th district, for the next doctor who's going to cure the cancer that's coming out of the 29th district to come out of this community. That's what I'm going to fight for.
Thank you, gentlemen. And thank you to our panel for those excellent questions. I do have 2 additional questions that have been organized by the leaders of today's event. And the first question, of course both of these based on your records, gentlemen, is for Representative Green. So on a number of occasions you have spoken up, and again, these are diving deeper into some of the things we've touched on already. So Representative Green, on a number of occasions you've spoken up against further EPA regulations that would reduce emissions, standing across the aisle from community residents whose families, they say, live day in and day out breathing what they say is toxic, cancer-causing emissions. In addition, you have a lifetime score of 64% from the League of Conservation Voters and what they would call a mixed voting record on key environmental issues that impact neighborhoods, including support for the Keystone XL pipeline. You've said that petrochemical companies are your constituents also, but your constituents here say that they're the ones that have to live daily with the impacts of these industries. So what is your commitment to moving forward to putting the community's children's health and safety ahead of profits, they say, for companies in the $15 billion petrochemical industry? And how will you fight for greater regulation of emissions?
First of all, I disagree with the premise of the question. I've never put company profits over my constituents. I've never spoken out against EPA regulations because I want EPA to regulate the air and the water quality. In fact, 2 nights ago, I was at an EPA hearing on the San Jacinto River where we have a toxic facility that was discovered in 2006, got on the EPA Superfund site, and we're still trying to get EPA to clean up that docks and facility there. So I'm not against environment, but you have to manage things in our district. We have a blue-collar district. We have refineries and chemical plants. I want my constituents who live in those neighborhoods in Manchester to be able to work at those plants. And so I want to make sure that they are produced safely and clean, and I'll hold their feet to the fire, but I also want to make sure those jobs are available in our community.
Congressman, thank you. And Sheriff Garcia, for you. Through the Secure Communities program under your leadership, Harris County turned over the 3rd highest number of people to ICE behind Los Angeles County and Maricopa County in Arizona. You also argued against funding cuts to the 287G program. In this race, you have also alluded to the fact that this is the perfect opportunity to elect a Latino candidate for a Latino district, with the underlying assumption that a Latino would stand up for the priorities of a Latino community. But as sheriff, you continue to enforce laws that constituents here feel work against Latino communities, that separate families and unnecessarily criminalize Latinos. Why should this community expect that you will support the best interests of the Latino community, which faces extreme health issues, poverty, and education deficits, when there are tremendous business interest and pressure from industries, specifically out of the Port of Houston?
Because I will, look, when we were doing this, when I became sheriff, my job was to keep people safe. And I became the sheriff after there was the murder of Rodney Johnson. And I was a police officer when Luis Aldape Guerra had murdered another Houston police officer. These were things that were in my memory. And I didn't want that to happen again. And I didn't want families. There have been many families in this community who have been preyed upon and victims of violent, undocumented individuals. So I was doing my best to keep the community safe. But I never turned my back on the community. When people started to yell about these programs, I listened to them. I invited them into my office, and then I got to work with the president and with Secretary Napolitano and Johnson, and I made the program better. And I worked with Gabby Pacheco. She saw me fight every single time, and that's why Gabby Pacheco, a dreamer, a national leader in the dreamer community, is standing with me today. Because she knows that I will continue to fight for all families, especially the Latino families who look just like mine. And being the son of immigrant parents, I remember the challenges. And I remember that my father had to wait in line to get permission to come into this country. But now that line is too long. It's 20 years long. And we need to do better. And what I'll do as your member of Congress is that I won't let other members of Congress be the voice for this district that is the 5th most Latino district in America. The voice for comprehensive immigration reform, for fighting for these things, has to come out of this district. Not allow Sheila Jackson Lee to be the voice, and not allow Luis Gutierrez to be the voice. It's got to come from the 29th district, and that's what I'm going to fight for. But let me also just say, give vergüenza for Gene to take the money from oil and gas companies.
And that's time. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
It is now time for give their closing remarks, and Representative Green, we will begin with you.
First, I want to thank TOP and SEIU and Mi Familia for holding this debate because having worked with two of the groups over the years, and I appreciate your community action in Pasadena and obviously SEIU and our community. I'm proud to be endorsed by the AFL-CIO, by the steel workers who work at those plants, those chemical plants and those refineries. And believe me, when I hear an issue, I don't call the plant manager, I call that local president to say, tell me what's going on there, because they know what happens on the ground. That's why I come home every weekend to have that kind of contact. And that's why we do these events all over our district: Citizenship Day, immunizations, town hall meetings, job fairs, paying for college workshops. That's what we've been doing for decades in our district to help our district. And let me close with one of the issues that the question didn't get was that the educational data in the 29th district. In 2004, age 18 to 24, there were 72.5% adults with college, it was high school diplomas. The numbers that are being turned around by my opponent are just incorrect. And I'll be glad to share this information with you. It has both Pasadena, Aldine, and HISD that has the numbers on it. And if you look at the census, that's the truth. And we've worked to make that improvement. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody. I want to thank SEIU and TOP. And let me just say that you have a choice. You have the opportunity to elect a leader. You have an opportunity to elect someone who will keep their mind open and fight for you. Listen to your issues and your concerns. Not make false choices between jobs and the environment. When you have an area that's known for its cancer clusters, and this is why community environmentalists are endorsing me, because they know that Gene has shut his mind and his door to fighting for a better environment. I learned the other day from these environmentalists that eye cancer amongst children is one of the issues that is occurring in this community. And look, a couple of percentage points, the information we have is that 58% of the district only has a high school diploma and only 9% has a college degree. It shouldn't even be anywhere close to that. It should be an area of opportunity, recognizing that the Latino community is the future of this state and of this country, and you ought to be fighting for it many years ago, not just today. And so this is an opportunity for leadership, for a voice. Someone who understands what many families are going through, but someone who believes that there can be a greater promise for you today and tomorrow. Never saying you'll never be River Oaks. You can cut the lawns, you can wash the dishes, you can serve the food, but you yourself can never be a part of that American dream. We need to have more than 54% of the district, or we need to do better, because over 54% of the district does not own their own home. And we need to fight for more opportunities for the families of this district. I'm Adrian Garcia. I want your support. I want your endorsement, because I will fight for you every single day, just as I have throughout my career. Thank you.
So we're not quite through with our program, and an update. We will have time for questions from the audience. So I'll give you guys some time to start thinking about your questions. You can write them down out first if you like, to help you formulate them better. So I'll give you time to do that. And while we're doing that, we're going to have Bishop Pittman go over the community's agenda for the candidates.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. Good morning. My name is Bishop David Pittman, and I'm the senior pastor of the Rock Ministries International that is within the Congressional District 29. I'm a proud member of TOP, proud TOP leader. We've now come to a moment where the agenda for today is where the rubber meets the road. And we're about to invite the candidates to sign this pledge before us on the Houston4All platform. But let me first give you a bit of background on how the platform came about. Some facts of last summer, the Texas Organizing Project, as well as SEIU, Texas, surveyed our membership and knocked on countless doors, literally thousands of them, and organized community forums such as these and neighborhood meetings to understand what Houstonians want from our elected officials. Here's what we heard. Number one, our Houston residents want good paying jobs. They want jobs that pay well and provide good benefits so that they can take care of their families. And because we have an impressive employment rate, we also need to understand that 1 in 5 Houstonians live in poverty or below the poverty line. Number two, we want neighborhoods of opportunity with nice, well-built, safe housing that we can afford. We also want quality schools in those neighborhoods. We want good, safe parks, neat sidewalks, and we also want good lighting and reliable drainage for all Houstonians. Currently, neighborhoods of opportunity are unaffordable to most of us who live in Houston, and they're out of reach for many Houstonians and that leaves many of them feeling very shoved away and pushed to the curb and abandoned. What we also need, number three, is to be welcoming of immigrants. We need to make sure that immigrants are treated fairly, they are treated with respect and protected from hateful and harmful attacks. Houston is the most diverse city in the U.S. with more than 400,000 undocumented immigrants that call Houston home. And we feel that Houston is in a great position, resourcefully and politically, to handle the process of this challenge. Lastly, we want sound infrastructure. We want investments in our drainage, our streets, our sidewalk repair. We also want good surrounding neighborhood protection, and this should be prioritized for neighborhoods that have been historically underserved. So having heard from our community, these 4 priorities, we now made them central focus to our political screenage and organizing campaigns. So, like good organizers, we are making sure that candidates don't get out of here without being asked. On behalf of the community, Congressional District 29 residents and voters, and the Houston4All campaign, we'll now ask each of you, Mr. Garcia and also Mr. Gene Green, would you pledge to be community champion fighting blessers with us on these issues?
I do, I do, I do, I do.
Well, I'm not going to marry you, but I've been working on those issues for all these years, and I agree with all of them, because that's what I tried to do over my terms in Congress, and I'll be glad to sign the pledge.
Thank you so very much. Well, so we want to invite you to sign the pledge this morning. I think we have a couple of Vanna White's is going to lift up these signage for us. Would you hold that there for me? This one as well. Thank you so very much. Whichever you decide to go first. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Thank you so much. And also, Mr. Green. One is in English and the other is in Spanish. Thank you, sirs. Thank you so very much. Thank you again.
Thank you, Bishop Pittman. All right, now we up to you, the members of the audience. So if you will raise your hand, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get a mic to you, but I will be happy to call on you. And we'll just start here in the front row with you, madam. If you will say your name and...
Okay, thank you. Diane Olmos Guzman. Hi. To both gentlemen, the question was asked about gentrification. I have lived in the 29th Congressional District, born and raised in Magnolia Park. And in my area, there's not a day that goes by that a developer sends me a letter that they want to buy my home. Up and down my street. Up and...
Test 1, 2.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Take a step forward.
Step forward. Okay. Up and down my street, there are broken sidewalks, broken drainage concrete, with big pieces of concrete thrown on top of the yards. Yet these developers come day in and day out, asking to buy our homes, disrupting the cultural value of our community. I have lived there since 1992, and I bought my home at a very nice, opportunity, and it has tripled and quadrupled since. Now, they've come and fixed, the loud blowing horn of the railroad. Why? Because we have those folks coming from the west side of town and buying our properties cheaply from the residents that are dying off. Now, I ask, what are you going to do about gentrification? Because we need to keep the integrity of our community. Actually, TBH was under the threat of being shut down and torn down by developers, but we fought hard to keep it. So I need to know, what are you going to do about keeping the integrity of our neighborhoods and allowing us to continue living in our neighborhoods as a solid, united Hispanic community?
Well, Diane, you live in a beautiful neighborhood, and the problem with those sidewalks is those beautiful trees have broken them all up, and that's been a city responsibility. In Harris County does not build sidewalks. That's just their standard. And when we've gotten sidewalks in the unincorporated area, I've had to get federal money for it, for in front of schools and things like that. The gentrification's a problem not only in Eastwood, Denver Harbor, North Side, a lot of our areas. And the city of Houston has no zoning, no restrictions. But I know that on the federal level, I would love to be able to say we need to, before we give loans in there in the community, federal backed loans, we need to make sure that it's a diverse community, that you have the seniors who maybe lived there for 50 years, but also for people who are not as wealthy as someone coming in and buying a house to tear down and build a mansion in it. So, but again, the only way we could do that on the federal level, and I think it's been done in some other parts of the country, to deal with gentrification. But we haven't had that issue until relatively recently in Houston. We'd be glad to work with you on it.
Diane, this is an issue that I fought against when I was on city council. But it brings me back to what I brought up earlier. In this district, you have over 20% of families living below poverty. In this congressional district, the median income is only $39,000. Gentrification wouldn't be an issue for this area if people could sustain their quality of life in this community. And when you have the families struggling so hard, they'll participate more in the political process. So raise the issues at City Hall and with the mayor to get the proper investments that this community needs. Those are things that I have fought for. Those are things that I will continue to fight for. But I also won't lie to you, because earlier Gene said that he's never spoken against EPA regulations. And I'm going to send this link to SEIU at the top, where it expressly says that Gene expressed his disappointment that the EPA is spending tax dollars to create a rule that has unjustifiable results because he claims that the public is already protected under adequate rules.
And that's time.
Gentrification needs a leader. I'll plan to do that.
Thank you for that question, and just a reminder to the candidates, these questions from the audience will have 1-minute responses. And our next question, I know there were lots of hands raised at one point. Okay, gentleman in the UH circle. Oh, the microphone, I didn't see the microphone, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, my name is Cesar Espinosa and I'm a semi-documented immigrant. I'm a DACA recipient. Mr. Garcia, there's an article dated February 18, 2012 that says that you traveled to Washington with Representative McCall to ask for continued funding for 287G. So I would like your feedback on that. And Congressman Green, in the years since you've been in office, there has been incidents where we send constituents or people that live in your district that are fighting bureaucracy with USCIS, and they've been turned away. So we want to know how can, if elected, how will you guys work with our population? Because we can't ignore the elephant in the room.
So let me just say thank you for the question. When I was fighting for keeping the community safe, that's exactly what I was fighting for. Remember that I had the backdrop of murders of police officers, families who have been victims at the hands of undocumented criminals, and I was fighting to keep the community safe. I was never working to become Sheriff Arpaio. In fact, when people wanted me to relinquish my position on certain task forces, I wanted to be there because that's how I would be able to fight to make sure that the programs were reformed to the extent that they've been reformed today. But I've learned from all that, Cesar, and that's why I would be an effective leader. I won't miss the vote on Real ID. I won't miss the vote on DACA. I won't sponsor 287G before I vote against it. So this is something that I know well, and this is why Gabby Pacheco, a national dreamer, is supporting my campaign, because she knows that I'll raise the issue, I will listen, and I will fight for you.
The facts say other things, because again, the Sheriff's Department in Harris County and one other agency were only state law enforcement agencies that use 287G. In the Comprehensive Immigration Reform, it would repeal that provision. There have been, I've been told, thousands who went through Harris County who did not have a felony. They didn't shoot police officers. They didn't have a felony. They had a misdemeanor, and yet they were still deported. And that was on Adrian's watch as Sheriff's Department. So, but I also know that we work every day with our constituents. Like I said, over the period of years, we have a great partnership working with helping our constituents and their families to be able to treat it fairly by bringing in family members and everything else. And I have staff here today who do that. And like I said, we don't do Citizenship Day every year since 1994 without learning a lot about the community and how we need to help people who have family members that need to be legal residents. And ultimately, I want to be citizens if we can pass comprehensive immigration reform.
If you've got the mic, you can stand up.
Gentlemen, I'm Mo Rivera. I don't know if this is on or not. My question is protection of oil and gas jobs. We've lost over 50,000 oil and gas jobs in the state of Texas, and it's a concern. And we've opened up the markets, allowing Iraq and Iran to sell oil openly to Europe, which has hurt us. What can you do as congressmen to alleviate that, the bleeding, and for us to not continue to lose more jobs than we're actually doing right now?
Mr. Garcia?
Thank you. First of all, on the last question, I would challenge Gene to produce a letter of protest to anything I was doing when I was a sheriff, because he didn't send one. He was absent, as he's always been, on these issues that are concerned to the community. On your question, Mo, let me just say that we have to do better. We are in a new normal. We know that things have changed. The price of oil has stayed depressed longer than anyone anticipated that it would, and yes, we have seen the loss of jobs. But we have to continue to diversify the economy in the Houston area. We need to bring in new energy sectors into the area and prepare our young people for those respective energy sectors. But not just to turn the nuts and bolts. I want those children to be the leaders and the presidents of those companies, bring in renewable energy companies into this area. That's how you offset the long-term economic effect of the depressed price of oil and the job losses. And we have to further diversify our economy. I was on the patrol car the last time this happened, and we have diversified our economy ever since. Thank you.
There have been huge number of losses in the production side Our downstream jobs, the refineries, chemical plants are doing very well. They're still hiring because of cheap natural gas and crude oil, and we're exporting a lot of the product we do in East Harris County. Now, what we have, Congress opened up the door for exporting LNG. You have to freeze the natural gas coming out of Eagle Ford and everywhere else, and that takes about $300 million to build those facilities. We will start in April, the first exports, and we're also exporting crude oil now. So we'll take that away. My only concern about exporting crude oil was I didn't want to price our domestic refining capacity, so we end up bringing back refined products from Venezuela instead of crude oil. But the good news is the first shipment out of Corpus Christi was light, sweet oil going to Venezuela instead of us buying it from Venezuela.
Good morning, and I want to, my name is Dr. Sergio. I want to thank you guys for being here this morning and the courage to seek election. My wife, my beautiful wife here, just walked 100 miles for 100 women in Washington. She just came back from Juarez, Mexico to see the Pope and to advocate for immigration reform. We both live in the East End all our lives. I do want to agree with one thing, Congressman Green. The East End should not be River Oaks for one reason. We don't have Latinos and African Americans living in River Oaks, but they work there. We want the new East End that's different from River Oaks in terms of real estate. Gentrification is all around us. That doesn't solve the poverty issue. All it does is push African Americans and Latinos further back. And look who lives in these townhomes around here. They're not the African Americans and Latinos. My wife and I have lived in the East End all our lives for one deliberate reason. We don't get educated and move up to the suburbs. We work in our communities. We want to be the role models for our communities, and we need to stay here. They need folks that look like us, representing us. But back to the question, Congressman Green, last night on PBS, I watched, that program that was high rating last night. You had a question, and I thought about it as a lifelong educator. You said that the graduation rate has increased for the students in the Congressional District 29. Yes, it has. But also there has been more Hispanics in Congressional District, so that just increases the number. That's one thing. But the real issue is that how well prepared are they for college? Let me give you some stats. I just read an article that states that Latinos in state universities enrollment has actually decreased because of the high cost and the tuition. Also, that is the reverse trend, even in spite of all the outreach programs and our wonderful cafe community centers and programs. The enrollment has decreased. The other issue are AP, the students who take advanced courses in high school, it's at an abysmal 1% passing rate for Latinos and African Americans. 1%. What are we going to do to increase our preparation for college? We're doing the best we can in our schools, in our public schools, but the smaller specialty schools are really drawing out some of our best talents. That's one thing. The other thing is we have to, what can you do to reduce or reverse the trend, regulate back the state universities and reverse the trend of high tuition costs and student debt and kids getting a loan and being a financial burden on their families. That's what I want to ask you. What can we do to reverse the trend of high tuition costs?
Well, the high tuition cost in 2003, the state legislature took the cap off tuition for public institutions, University of Houston, TSU, A&M, all public institutions. The rate has gone up dramatically. My wife and I are proud graduates of the University of Houston, but I was able to work my way through college, and she went on loans because she knew she wanted to be an algebra teacher, and that's what she did in Aldine School District. She taught for 26 years. Today, they're pricing our students out. Now, on the federal level, I voted to increase Pell Grants. In our district, Pell Grants are the basic way students can afford to go to college. It's based on your family income. The problem is when Texas took the cap off in 2003, They also created what's a Texas fund, but in the last few years, they've cut that money. We used to be able to get Pell Grants and money from the state of Texas to help our constituents. No longer. It's mainly Pell Grants, and they're still good, but they're not keeping up with the increase in tuition. I would not have voted to take the lid off public school tuition if I'd been in the legislature.
Let me just thank you, Doctor, for raising the issue on education, because I've been doing it from day one on this campaign. It was the motivator for me to announce my candidacy for this race. And it's why educators for Adrian, educators from across the congressional district are supporting me, because they know that Gene's been absent on education, because he settles for us being distinguished as a blue-collar community. That's what we are, and that's what we'll always be, and I disagree. I have already put together a multi-point plan to address education congressional district, working with the superintendents, working with the administrators of every campus, visiting every campus every year to make sure that we're moving the needle every day. I support what Mayor Parker and Councilmember Ed Gonzalez did with Cafe College. We need to do more. But you're right. There's two things that are challenging our kids in going on to higher education. One is that they're not prepared. Secondly, they quit because they need to support their families, because of the level of the low income, medium income, and because of the poverty level. Those are issues that do not stand alone aside from education. I'm going to fight for this. Education will be my priority as your member of Congress.
And just before we get to the next question, we want to let everyone know we do welcome preguntas en español also. So if you want to ask a question in Spanish, we'll welcome that and we'll be able to translate that for you. Sir?
I'm better off in English.
Go ahead.
I'm glad to know that Adrian is focusing on education. It's been one of my, pet peeves in terms of the underrepresentation of teachers in district public schools, colleges, and universities. In the case of an organization like Lone Star College, they're under investigation by the EEOC because they have up to 60% Hispanic enrollment, and they only have 6% of the teachers are bicultural. How can a student be inspired by either a non-Hispanic teacher or someone that doesn't speak the language, Spanish, doesn't understand their culture, their motivation? How can that person inspire someone? So what have you done? What do you plan to do to change the dynamics in this disparity and underrepresentation?
Mr. Garcia, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Joe, I appreciate the question because, again, education has been my priority. It will be my priority. And when you visit the campuses and when you work with the superintendent and you're asking this question, you're not afraid to ask the question, where is the diversity in the classroom? When you look into the classroom and you see children that look like this room, you have to ask that question. You have to be willing to fight. You have to be willing to push the status quo, not settle for the answers that you get. I've never settled for those answers. I've never taken no as an easy answer. I've always fought to improve that. When Davis was going through his challenges, I was proud to see Jim Kettleson develop the Presidential Scholarship Program for that school. The Kettleson family has endorsed my campaign in previous years, and I'm proud because that's the model that I look to make oil and gas companies do in this congressional district. Instead of polluting our air, let's make sure that they clean the air, but also invest in our children and make sure we invest in educators to support the schools.
Well, and I'm glad that the EOC, the federal agencies, is doing their job in Lone Star College or any other college. But I have made education number one. I go to schools, I go to elementary schools, high schools, all the time. And we do paying for college workshops, and we've moved them around our district over the last 15 years. We're on the third time to most of our high schools now. So education is a high priority. Education to get someone an opportunity to go to college or get a job, though, is really important. But in this race, if educators have endorsed me, the National Education Association, NEA, and the AFT. In fact, my wife is a retired high school algebra teacher, and if I didn't support education, I wouldn't get dinner at night.
Our next question is coming from...
Yes, I'm Jessica Halsey. Yo soy Jessica Halsey, member of this community, miembro de esta comunidad. Mi pregunta es sobre las armas, gun safety, que diariamente está matando a niños en nuestros hogares. Estamos muy preocupados todos en mi comunidad. Diariamente hay acceso muy fácil a las armas, y nuestra preocupación es para los dos candidatos, ¿qué van a hacer? ¿Qué van a hacer para proteger a nuestros niños? Especialmente nosotros, que en nuestros barrios constantemente es muy fácil tener acceso a armas de fuego. Nuestra preocupación también es de que ustedes endorsen este grupo que se llama NRA. Eso nos preocupa a nosotros. We worry about that. También loopholes que trabajan en contra de nosotros, porque nosotros aquí en nuestros barrios hispanos lo vivimos diariamente. Esas armas se oyen constantemente. Ustedes, los dos candidatos, ¿qué van a hacer para protegernos a nuestros niños de mi color, a mis hermanos black and brown, a mis hermanos negros? Por favor, necesitamos que ustedes dos no se involucren, no endorsement to NRA, no more loopholes que crean estos crímenes inocentes que afectan a nuestros niños inocentes. Gracias.
So, Representative Green, she was concerned about the easy access to guns in the community. She wants to know what you plan to do about it.
Votes. The Second Amendment and the First Amendment are very important to the Constitution, but there's controls on both of them. And in my first term in Congress in 1994, I voted for the crime bill that included most of the gun control restrictions we have now. I voted for trigger locks. I voted for many, in fact, the reason I say that is that there's an article here that Garcia misrepresents the NRA support for Green, and it was on political So I believe we need to have control of firearms, but I also know that's also part of our Constitution.
Gene Green wants to make you believe, and I really encourage you to read that political fact article, because it lays out every vote that Gene has made against the president's agenda for gun safety. Read it, because he's voted against child safety locks. He later voted for it, but he voted only because he was taking gun manufacturers off the hook so that you couldn't sue them. And so he has voted against closing the gun show loophole. When President Reagan, or when the Brady Bill rather was proposed, Gene voted against it. The Brady Bill kept 2 million guns from falling into the wrong hands because of universal background checks and a 5-day waiting period. Gene voted against it. And then when I brought up the issue of the McDonald's store owner that was murdered recently, and I was making the point of gun violence, he said, well, he didn't, that wasn't in the 29 district. Like it matters. This is the attitude that he has that we need to change. I vote for gun safety.
All right, we have time for 4 more questions, I'm being told. So just to let you know, 4 more questions from the audience. If you have the microphone, raise your hand. I think we lost it. We haven't been down to the in a while.
Hi, gracias a TOPS, Mi Familia Vota y SEIU. Thank you to TOPS, Mi Familia Vota, and SEIU who care about our community. Thank you. I am the child of an undocumented immigrant. She raised 6 kids. And I just left my mother off in Northside, and I tweeted a picture on Lorraine and Gano. And there is a line of people lining up for food. There's poverty, extreme poverty in our district. What specifically will you do to address poverty in Congressional District 29? And in addition, you have John Cornyn trying to work to address criminal justice reform with Republicans. What are you going to do to address the problem of Harris County having the highest exonerations, criminal justice reform, and mass incarceration? Thank you.
Let me take the last question first. The criminal justice reform, I know there's efforts in the state legislature this last session, and there will be more. What Senator Cornyn's doing is backing off some of these terrible sentences that we see for very small usage of drugs. Rehab works much better than prison. And so the bill hadn't come into the House, but I intend to support it. I just want to make sure it does what it intends to do, because I think Congress over the years went way overboard on that issue. And like I said, it's also a state issue, though, because of so much of our local community. Now, as far as for the poverty, we work every day to try and help people do better in their community. That food line is probably, it's like my church has a food pantry. We have one of the best food banks in the country in Houston that partners with all our local communities, because that's immediate help. But I also know we work hard to make sure those folks have an opportunity to improve themselves through education, but also any way we can, health care, you name it. We work that every day in our office.
And thank you for raising the issue on poverty and criminal justice reform, because you're right, we need to do better on both fronts. And it is, second to education, it has been the level of poverty that we have in this community, in this congressional district, and it's actually gotten worse during Gene's time. That 1 in 3 children are living below poverty. Over 20% of the district living below poverty. And this is why I support raising the minimum wage. And this is why I also support bringing in better paying jobs in the district. So we can give families in this district the opportunity to have a higher quality of life so that they can be the Second Ward River Roads. All right? Of the families of Second Ward.
That's time.
And then also, thank you.
All right, we have one final question for this morning from in front.
Mi nombre es Nicolasa. Mi pregunta es, ¿cómo apoyarían las escuelas elementales, especialmente que entrando a la escuela ya vienen los niños con diferentes tipos de enfermedades? No especificando, pero sí lo que necesito, especialmente como madre y diferentes madres que existen en las escuelas, que necesitan enfermeros o enfermeras en las escuelas durante todo el día por cualquier cosa que pase, y que necesitan más atención y que tengan esos maestros y, ¿cómo le puedo decir? Todo lo que están en la escuela encargados de esos niños, que sepan diferenciar el trato hacia cada niño, sin importar el tipo de enfermedad que tenga. Necesitamos más apoyo sobre estos temas, por favor.
Her question is, how would you help with the nursing school district, with the different diseases that have been going on?
Your mic's not working.
Her question is, how would you
Hold it closer, please.
How would you, or what would you do to add more,
They need more nurses on school
nurses
campuses.
on the school grounds, yes, for the new diseases that are coming up?
Mr. Garcia, would you like to go first?
Gracias por la pregunta, y la mera verdad, en este distrito, en el distrito 29, tenemos los índices más altos a través de cáncer, leucemia y enfermedades de respiración. Todo porque Gene Green vota en contra del medio ambiente. Entonces, por eso necesitamos más enfermeras en las varias escuelas. Eso no es justo. Primero, cuando uno se llega a poner a ser un defensor de la comunidad, de nuestros hijos, y bajar el índice es que nuestros hijos tienen el 56% de estar más a riesgo de tener cáncer, leucemia y otras enfermedades. Eso es cuando llegamos a no tener que requerir más enfermeras en las varias escuelas. Pero en cualquier manera, por eso mi plan de educación va a ser de trabajar con los varios superintendentes de los varios distritos escolares que son del distrito 29, trabajando con los directores para que yo pueda escuchar las necesidades y aunque no me pertenece como su congresista, yo voy a pelear para ustedes en el distrito escolar en que le pertenece, porque cuando uno llega a votar por uno, llega a ser la voz de usted.
The issue of nursing, school nurses, is typically a local school district decision. The state can put requirements on school districts. 90% of the funding for our public schools come from the state and local level. Now, believe me, I believe we need to have school nurses. And on the federal level, I'd be glad to, whenever we have an education reform bill, to do that. But those decisions are made by your local school board and not your member of Congress.
All right, and with that, our forum comes to a close. Did everyone enjoy it? Did you find it educational? Thank you again to the panel of our question askers from the various organizations here today. Thank you to the candidates. And remember, early voting is underway right now. You have until Friday, February... Oh, sorry, sir. Hello. Hi.
There's a gentleman here that's been raising his hand since it started.
Do we have time for one more question?
Get up,
One more question.
All right.
Well deserved. My name is Gene Jones, and I have two questions actually to ask Sheriff Garcia. Sheriff, when
They're bringing your mic.
I could raise my voice louder. I have two questions actually to ask Sheriff Garcia. That when you were over... That does not work. Move this way. Come over here. Come over. Sir, you spent approximately 6 years, you can correct me about the amount of time, over to the Sheriff's Department in charge of there. And after you left there, I know last week, or sometimes I believe it was last week, that the sheriff's union over there endorsed Gene Green, and that would make it appear to me that the people who know you support you the least, and perhaps you can respond to that. The other thing that gets my attention about you continually mention that these documented immigrants coming over and committing these horrible crimes. The last person I heard speak just in an identical manner was Donald Trump. Are you subscribing to Donald Trump's notion about that they're the people that's responsible for the crimes that when they come over here as undocumented aliens? If you are, I don't think the facts will prove that up.
Thank you, Gene, for your question. You know, the reality is that on your first question, the deputies union did endorse Gene, and I'm sure he's very proud of that endorsement, because that same union is also endorsing Republican Sheriff Ron Hickman on doing away with an anti-corruption unit that I put in place. That he's doing away with transparency in the sheriff's office that I worked hard to put in place. That he's doing away with lowering the number of jail inspectors, something that I increased. And these are the things that the Republican sheriff has put in place. The union embraces and endorses those moves away from reform and away from transparency, away from accountability, away from fighting corruption. And they endorse him, and he's proud of that endorsement. So you're right. They do know me because I fought for reforms. I fought to move the department in a better direction. and they're endorsing Gene, and they're endorsing Republican Sheriff Ron Hickman. On the question of Donald Trump, oh, hell no. Hell no, I don't value that man's opinion worth a darn. And that's why I asked for you to pray for the Pope, and I asked you to pray for Donald Trump. Because somehow or another, we got to get to that thick hair, to get to that thick head, to get to his heart. Because, you know, I'm proud of Sheila Jackson-Lee. I'm proud of Luis Gutierrez. Because when Donald Trump speaks that kind of vitriol, they stand up loud and scream to the top of their voices, while the member of Congress in the 5th most Latino congressional district in America remains silent. That's not what I'm going to do.
When my opponent first announced, he said he was going to run against Donald Trump. He didn't realize he had to run in the Democratic primary and run against me. And that's where we're working. I have supported comprehensive immigration reform, and that's why Luis Gutierrez is supporting me and not Adrian Garcia. And I'm proud to have the endorsements that I have, but I also know that it's been publicized that, you know, we wouldn't have a Republican sheriff if Adrian stayed as sheriff.
I was saying that early voting is now underway until Friday, February 26th. So if you do vote early, you can do so at any early voting location. And of course, Election Day is March 1st, so get out there and vote. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.